Welcome, restless dreamer. You've just stepped into the shadows of sleep, where stories whisper and the darkness listens. I'm your guide tonight, your voice in the void, here to lead you gently into nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Before we begin, press like if you're brave enough, and subscribe for more midnight tales that blur the line between sleep and terror. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what hour has found you? I've been a paramedic for 8 years, and I thought I'd seen everything death could show me. Car wrecks where bodies looked more like broken mannequins, overdoses in cramped apartments where the smell of vomit and spoiled food clung to the wallpaper, heart attacks at backyard cookouts, children crying while their fathers collapsed onto the grass. I've stood in living rooms, roadside ditches, hospital hallways, anywhere a life could end, and tried to drag people back across that line. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. But lately, I've been seeing something that doesn't fit anywhere in the textbooks. It started small, a twitch. That's not unusual. Bodies do strange things after death. Electrical impulses firing off in dying nerves. I've seen fingers curl or a chest spasm long after the monitor flatlined. But this was different. It was 2 months ago, during a night shift. We'd brought in a middle-aged man after a heart attack at his home. Despite everything, compressions, shocks, meds, he didn't come back. We rolled him into the ER, where the doctor called time of death at 1:42 a.m. I stayed in the corner, peeling off my gloves, sweat cooling on my back, and then I saw it. The man's chest rose, a shallow, deliberate breath. I froze. No one else noticed. The doctor was already writing in the chart, the nurse gathering supplies. I blinked hard, thinking maybe it was just a leftover muscle twitch. But then the man's eyes opened. They didn't dart around or flutter weakly. They locked onto me. His lips parted like he wanted to say something. I must have made a sound, because the nurse glanced at me. "You good?" she asked. I nodded too quickly. When I looked back, the man's eyes were closed again. His chest was still. The monitor was a flat line. No one had seen it but me. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, a trick of the mind. That's what I clung to until it happened again. A week later, a young woman who'd been in a car wreck. Time of death, 3:07 a.m. As we zipped the body bag, I saw her fingers flex, not random spasms. Her hand reached toward me. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the chart. The other paramedic, Dan, gave me a look. "You okay?" I nodded again, always nodding, always pretending. By the third time, I knew it wasn't in my head. This patient was different, an overdose. We got her into the ER, and after 40 minutes of nothing, the doctor shook his head. Time of death, 2:56 a.m. The nurse covered her face with a sheet. I was about to leave when the sheet shifted. Her mouth opened wide in a silent gasp. Her eyes snapped open, bulging, filled with raw terror. She looked straight at me, straight through me. Then, just as suddenly, she went still again. I couldn't breathe. That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot until sunrise, replaying it over and over. No one else ever noticed. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not my partner. Only me. At first I thought maybe it was some kind of hallucination. Stress, PTSD, sleep deprivation, whatever excuse I could cling to. But then I noticed a pattern. Every single one of them, every single patient I saw move, was an organ donor. That realization nearly broke me. I started checking their licenses, asking subtle questions, digging through charts. Without fail, every one of the patients who stirred after death had a donor heart on their driver's license, a box checked on a form. It was too specific to ignore. What made it worse was what happened last week. We were in the OR for an organ retrieval. A 39-year-old man who'd suffered a brain aneurysm, declared brain dead, ventilator keeping his body alive. The surgeons were prepping. I wasn't supposed to stay, but something told me not to leave. I lingered, watching. As they began, his eyelids flickered. His lips moved. I couldn't hear what he said, but I swear he was trying to form words. I wanted to scream, to shout for them to stop, but my throat locked. My hands gripped the rail so hard my knuckles went white. The surgeons kept working, oblivious. None of them saw, but I did. And I knew then that I was witnessing something no one was supposed to. Since that night, I've been haunted by the same thought. What if organ donors aren't as gone as we believe? What if, in those final moments, their awareness lingers, trapped in a body everyone else has given up on? And what if I'm the only one cursed to see it? I've started keeping a notebook, dates, times, names when I can remember them. What I saw, how long it lasted, little details that no one else could confirm. I read over the pages again and again, wondering if I'm piecing together a mystery or writing the diary of a madman. But I can't shake the feeling that the truth is buried in these details. The thing is, I don't want to believe in ghosts or souls or any of that. I'm a medical professional. I've always trusted monitors, charts, science. Yet the eyes I've seen open after death weren't empty. They weren't random reflexes. They were aware, and they were terrified. The fear in those eyes haunts me more than the movements themselves. Whatever they're experiencing in those moments, it isn't peace. The hospital is starting to notice me. I linger too long. I flinch at the wrong times. Dan asked me last night if I was using again, which pissed me off because I've been clean for years. But how do I explain it? How do I tell him the dead are looking at me? The answer came to me during one of my long, sleepless nights. I need proof. If I can capture it on video, then maybe I'm not insane. Maybe I can finally show someone. So last night, when we brought in another patient, a motorbike crash young guy, couldn't have been older than 25, I set my phone on the counter, angled just right. I pretended to wash my hands, keeping it recording. Time of death, 4:13 a.m. I stared, waiting. Nothing happened. The nurses cleared the room. Dan left for coffee. I was alone. And then it happened. The young man's chest rose with a slow, deep breath. His eyes flew open, bloodshot and panicked. He turned his head toward me. His lips moved, struggling to form words. I leaned closer, phone forgotten. His voice was no more than a rasp, but I heard it. Help. Me. I staggered back, knocking into a tray. Instruments clattered to the floor. I fumbled for my phone, desperate to capture it. But when I looked, the screen was black. The recording had stopped minutes earlier. I lifted my gaze, and the patient was still. Eyes closed, chest unmoving, dead again. I almost smashed the phone right there. This morning, I checked the video. Nothing. Just a still, lifeless body. Always the same. Only I see it. Only I hear it. Now I'm left with the sickening possibility that I'm not meant to expose this. That whatever veil exists between life and death, I'm standing with one foot on each side, and the dead are reaching for me because I'm the only one who can see them. But here's the part that terrifies me most. Last night, as I drove home, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. For a second, I swear I didn't recognize myself. My own eyes stared back at me, wide and bloodshot, and in that fleeting moment, I could have sworn they weren't mine at all. They looked just like the eyes of the donors, the ones begging for help, the ones no one else could see. And now, I'm afraid it's only a matter of time before I'm the one on the table, lips moving soundlessly while the world moves on, everyone blind except the next unlucky soul cursed to watch. I've been working night shifts for as long as I can remember. You get used to the silence, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the rhythm of half-asleep voices calling in with their emergencies. My desk sat in the corner of the dispatch center, a headset glued to my ears, screens glowing with maps, addresses, and the endless stream of panic pouring in from the world outside. Most nights, it was predictable. Domestic disputes, car accidents, the occasional prank call from a teenager who thought wasting our time was funny. But then came the voice. The first time it happened was on a Wednesday around 2:13 a.m. The line crackled, faint at first, And then I heard it, a woman's trembling whisper. "Help me, please. He won't stop. I can't move." I sat up straighter, adrenaline spiking. I typed quickly into the system asking for her location. The address came through automatically, 421 Willow Creek Road. The voice on the other end kept begging, describing her injuries in broken gasps. "My ribs, my arm. He's still in the house." I dispatched a unit immediately, heart pounding. The officers arrived within minutes. I waited, headset still humming with the woman's weak cries until, abruptly, the line went dead. Not long after, the responding officer called back. "There's nothing here. Just an empty lot. No house, no woman, no sign of anyone." I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. Wrong address, glitch in the system. But when I checked the log, it was crystal clear. 421 Willow Creek Road, a house that didn't exist. The call haunted me, but I chalked it up to fatigue. Maybe I'd imagined parts of it. Maybe the system had glitched. That was easier to believe than the alternative, until it happened again. The next week, almost exactly at 2:13 a.m., the same voice came through. Weak, trembling, desperate. "Help me! He's hurting me again. Please, please don't let me die." The same address, the same empty lot, the same cutoff when officers arrived. I started keeping track. Every Wednesday. Same time, same voice. At first my coworkers joked about it. "Guess you've got your own ghost caller," one of them teased, sipping stale coffee. But after the third week, even the seasoned veterans stopped laughing. "Maybe it's a recording," someone suggested. "Someone messing with the system." But if it was a recording, how did she change her words every time? How did she sound like she was fading, closer to death each call? I tried to tell myself it was some elaborate prank, but I couldn't shake the sound of her voice. Raw, terrified, pleading. It lingered with me long after the call ended. By the 5th week, I couldn't sleep during the day. I'd lie awake in my apartment, headphones off, yet still hearing faint sobs echoing in my head. I started dreading Wednesdays, watching the clock crawl toward 2:13 like a countdown. That night, when the call came in again, something was different. The voice was weaker than ever, rasping like it came from someone barely alive. "Please, it hurts so much. He's right here." Static burst through the line, and for a second I thought I heard something else. Breathing. A deep, steady exhale that didn't belong to her. My hand shook as I dispatched the officers again, knowing they'd find nothing, knowing I'd have to explain it again. But before the line cut off, I swear I heard something that froze me solid. The woman whispered, "He knows you're listening." The line went dead. I yanked the headset off, skin prickling. My co-workers looked at me, concerned, but I couldn't bring myself to explain what I'd just heard. Later, alone in my apartment, I sat in the dark, staring at my silent phone. I told myself it was all in my head, that I was overworked, paranoid, imagining things. Then, at 2:13 a.m., off shift, headset nowhere near me, my cell phone rang. The caller ID said, "Unknown." I answered with trembling fingers. "Help me," the same voice whispered. "He's here, with you." And the call ended. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with every light on, clutching my phone like it was a weapon. No more pretending this was just a system glitch. Somehow, the calls had followed me home. The next morning, I drove to Willow Creek Road. I had to see it for myself. The GPS led me down winding country lanes until I reached the spot, an overgrown lot surrounded by trees. Weeds pushed through broken pavement, and the faint outline of a driveway disappeared into nothing. No house, no mailbox, just silence. But standing there, I felt it, a heaviness in the air, like the land itself remembered something it wanted to forget. I left quickly, but the unease followed me back. At work that night, I tried to focus on other calls, but my eyes kept darting to the clock. 2:13 a.m. came faster than I wanted, and right on time, the headset filled with static. "Help me! He won't stop." This time I forced myself to respond differently. "Who are you? What's your name?" I asked. Silence, then a broken sob. I can't leave. The call cut off. My coworkers stared at me as I ripped the headset off. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was losing it. Maybe I was, but things escalated. 2 nights later, I woke in my apartment to the sound of my landline ringing. I didn't even remember owning a landline. When I picked up, the line crackled, and the voice whispered, "He's there." I froze. My apartment was dark except for the glow of the clock. 2:13 a.m. My skin prickled as I realized I wasn't alone. From the corner of the room, a shadow shifted. I swear I saw movement just beyond the reach of the light, like someone standing in the dark, watching. My chest tightened, breath shallow, but when I flipped the lamp on, nothing. Still, I knew better. The next day, I asked around about Willow Creek Road. Old records, archives. Finally, I found something buried in a local newspaper from the 1970s. A house had stood there once. A family of 3. Police reports of domestic violence. Neighbors claiming they heard screams in the night. And one final article. The house had burned down after a tragic incident. The bodies were never recovered. The woman's pleas made sense now, but that didn't explain why she was calling me. Unless he knew I was listening, like she said. That night, I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I sat in my apartment, lights off, phone on the table, waiting. 2:13 a.m. The phone rang. My hand shook as I answered. "Please," the voice whispered, barely audible. "He's behind you." I spun around, just in time to catch the faint reflection of a man's silhouette in the darkened window. I dropped the phone. It kept whispering. I never thought a job could make you question reality, but being a paramedic in a busy city has a way of doing that. Nights were the worst, of course. The streets quiet, the city's pulse reduced to distant sirens and occasional screeching tires. That year, I'd been paired with Eli, a seasoned EMT who had a knack for keeping calm when chaos hit. Together, we handled the usual horrors: car crashes, overdoses, and people who had pushed their bodies too far. But nothing prepared me for the calls from Hargrove Tower. It started on a Friday evening. Dispatch crackled through my headset around 11:42 p.m., reporting a cardiac emergency inside Hargrove Tower. The building was a downtown high-rise, mostly office space, older than it looked, with creaky elevators and an air of perpetual hum. Eli and I grabbed our gear, adrenaline kicking in, and headed out. When we arrived, the lobby was quiet, just a faint hum from the old fluorescent lights. A security guard, sweating and pale, met us halfway. "There's someone trapped in elevator 3, he said. He collapsed between the 14th and 15th floors. Eli and I exchanged a look. Elevator 3 had been decommissioned for years. We'd responded to Hargrove dozens of times. We knew the elevators. This one had been sealed after a fatal incident years back. Someone had died trapped inside when the emergency brakes failed. The shaft had been cut off from the system entirely. We followed the guard to the elevator bank. The doors were pristine, untouched, and locked tight. "There's no one in there," the guard whispered. We saw it on the security feed, but then, nothing. I pulled out my emergency key anyway. The metal felt cold against my palm as I slid it into the slot. The doors gave a low, creaking groan, and a shadow of darkness stretched out before us. It smelled faintly metallic, like old machinery mixed with something rotten. I shined my flashlight into the cab. Empty, spotless. Not a scrap of clothing, no briefcase, nothing. Eli muttered, "Probably a prank call. Someone messing with the system." I wanted to believe him, but my gut screamed otherwise. Dispatch had logged the call, full details from the building's own emergency system. We left that night uneasy. The city felt louder somehow, even with its streets empty. My dreams were restless. I kept seeing the faint reflection of a man in a gray suit pressing himself against the elevator walls. By the following week, the calls returned. This time, Dispatch reported 2 people fainting in elevator 3, same floors. Eli and I rolled our eyes. Again, we arrived to find the cab locked, pristine, and empty. A faint hum echoed from inside, almost like a heartbeat, but that could have been the wind. Still, the air felt heavier, colder. I cornered Leonard, one of the building's maintenance staff, to ask about it. Elevator 3's been shut down for over 10 years, he said flatly, wiping grease from his hands. No power, no cables, no emergency line. It's sealed from the bottom to the top. Then how are we getting calls from it? I asked. He shrugged. Beats me. Nobody touches it. Nobody wants to. Something about it just feels wrong. Despite the warnings, the calls kept coming. Eli and I started logging them ourselves. Each report described someone collapsing in the cab, always between the 14th and 15th floors. Sometimes it was a young woman, sometimes an elderly man, but the details were consistent. Chest pain, fainting, urgent cries for help. Every time the cab appeared empty, yet the noises persisted. One night, we arrived to find security already on edge. They'd heard the muffled sounds too. Eli and I stood before the sealed doors, flashlights cutting through the darkness. A faint thump echoed from inside, then a weak groan. I reached for the emergency key. The metal turned in the lock with difficulty, the cab doors creaking open slowly. For a moment I saw him, a man in a gray, crumpled suit, pressed against the back wall. His eyes locked onto mine, wide and pleading. One hand clutched his chest, as if trying to stop a heart that had long since failed. I froze, flashlight shaking in my hand. Then, in a blink, he vanished. Just 4 blank steel walls, and the soft hum of the elevator's machinery remained. Eli muttered, "Did you see that?" I nodded, too shaken to speak. Security radioed the control room. The feed showed only empty steel and cables. Nobody explained it, and I didn't press further. After that night, the building owners ordered the elevator permanently sealed behind steel panels. Dispatch stopped receiving calls from Hargrove Tower altogether. But the image of that man, his waxy skin, pleading eyes, and desperate hand, never left me. Even during routine calls in the area, my mind drifts back. I can't shake the feeling that he's still there, waiting, trying to reach a phone that no longer exists. I don't believe in ghosts, but Hargrove Tower, it's changed something in me. Even after the elevator was sealed, the memory of that man haunted me. Every time I passed Hargrove Tower, I felt it, a faint pull, like a heartbeat I couldn't hear but could feel. Eli tried to laugh it off, saying the city was full of strange things you learn to ignore. But I knew what I saw. That wasn't imagination. Not entirely. Weeks passed. Calls from Hargrove Tower officially stopped. But one night, around 2:13 a.m., my radio crackled with a faint but urgent voice. It wasn't dispatch. It was different, electronic, garbled, yet undeniably human. "Help, please. Between 14 and 15. My stomach dropped. I looked at Eli. He paled, gripping the steering wheel tighter. We had to check. Even sealed, even against logic, I couldn't ignore it. We parked outside the building. The street was silent, the lobby dark. My flashlight cut through the shadows as we approached the steel panels covering elevator 3. The panels were cold, smooth, and unyielding, completely intact, just as they'd been sealed. I pressed my hand against the metal. Then came the faint sound, soft, barely audible, like a man coughing from deep inside the walls. My heart raced. Eli and I exchanged a look. He knew I wasn't joking. The sound came again, clearer, more desperate. "Please, help me." I shook my head, trying to rationalize it. The elevator shaft was empty. No power, no cab, no ventilation. Nothing could exist in there. And yet, that voice. I pulled out my phone and recorded it. The audio was faint, almost drowned out by the hum of the city, but it was there, clear, human, real. For the next week, we couldn't shake it. Each night, just after 2 a.m., the calls returned. only now they weren't over the radio. They were faint, coming through my personal recording app, sometimes directly from the emergency line, even though the system should have blocked anything from that decommissioned elevator. It was as if the building itself had found a way to speak. I contacted a structural engineer, someone who specialized in old high-rises. Eli came with me, reluctant but curious. We walked the service halls, examined the old wiring, the shaft, the sealed panels. Nothing. No gaps, no old lines, no way for sound to travel from the sealed elevator to the lobby. He shrugged, saying it didn't make sense from any engineering perspective. I didn't care about sense. I cared about that voice. Then one night, I decided to stay inside the building after a late call. Security reluctantly agreed. Around 2:05 a.m., I stationed myself in front of the panels. I heard it. A low, desperate moan from within. I pressed my ear to the steel. The metallic tang hit my nose again, faint but unmistakable. "Help me," the voice rasped. It was the same man, in the same gray suit, same pleading tone. "I can't breathe." I reached for the emergency key Eli had copied for me. My hands shook. Turning the lock, the steel panel shifted slightly with a groan. I shined my flashlight inside, and there he was, clearer than ever, pressed against the back wall, waxy, eyes fixed on mine, hand clutching his chest. My stomach lurched. He opened his mouth, gasping, and I could swear I heard the faint echo of a heartbeat. "Who are you?" I whispered. The cab remained silent except for that faint, ragged breathing. Then, just like before, he vanished. Empty walls, humming lights, and my flashlight reflecting off bare steel. Eli and I decided we couldn't face this alone. We contacted the building owners, the city's fire marshal, even paranormal investigators out of desperation. Nobody could explain it. Security cameras confirmed the shaft was empty, wires and emergency phones were disconnected, and yet something inside that elevator was calling for help. It wasn't just a ghost. It was a message, a loop of distress that the building had absorbed and now projected. I started keeping a log. Dates, times, descriptions, recordings. Each entry matched previous ones. Someone, somewhere, trying to reach out from an impossible space. Finally, Eli suggested something drastic. "We need to open the entire shaft. See if there's anything trapped inside," he said. His tone was calm, but I knew his hands were shaking as mine were. We convinced the owners to hire a demolition crew, not to destroy, but to gain access. The night the crew arrived, I felt both dread and relief. Panels were removed, cables exposed, and for hours we inspected the shaft. Nothing. Empty steel, old grease stains, shadows stretching unnaturally, but no body, no cab, nothing. Still, the voice returned once more, low and desperate, faint through the hum of the city, through my radio, through my own heartbeat. "Help, please." We sealed the shaft again. Nothing more could be done. Eli transferred to another city a few months later, leaving me behind. I still work the night shift, still answer calls, still pass Hargrove Tower. Every time I do, I feel it. A pull, a whisper in my chest. The memory of eyes locked on mine, begging for someone to show up. I've learned to ignore the rational mind sometimes. Logic doesn't hold in moments like that. Whatever it was in that elevator, it's still there, waiting. Maybe it's trapped between floors, between life and death, reaching for a phone that can't save him. Sometimes I catch myself hoping someone else will answer if it ever calls again. Because whether it's a ghost, a memory, or some lingering fragment of tragedy, one thing is clear. Someone, or something, needed help, and someone came. And that is all that matters. I never imagined a routine night as a paramedic could leave me questioning reality itself. I had been working in a mid-sized city for almost 2 years, navigating chaotic streets and emergency calls, but nothing had ever unsettled me until that Friday in early April. I was partnered with Mark, a veteran EMT with a sharp sense of direction and an uncanny intuition. We had a rhythm. I trusted him and he trusted me. That night started normally. Coffee from the gas station, checking our rig, and scanning our dispatch for calls. The first call came in just after 7 p.m. A routine chest pain case at an apartment complex a few blocks away. Nothing unusual. I loaded the patient, a middle-aged man who reassured me he'd be fine, and we headed for St. Helena's Hospital, the main facility in the city. But then the dispatch radio crackled again. Unit 42, patient transport to St. Helena's, 12th floor, East Wing, cardiac unit. ETA 10 minutes. Mark paused, his hand on the console. 12th floor, East Wing. That doesn't make sense. The cardiac unit is on the 8th floor of the main tower. I frowned. Maybe they renovated or added a new unit. Maybe, Mark said cautiously. Let's double-check with dispatch before we head in. The dispatcher repeated the instructions. 12th floor, East Wing, patient awaiting. No hesitation, no correction. Mark sighed, shrugged, and said, "All right, let's just go. We'll figure it out." The drive to St. Helena's was uneventful, but there was a tension in the air neither of us could shake. The hospital had an older section built in the 1960s and a newer tower from the 1990s, and the corridors had a confusing maze-like layout. We pulled into the ambulance bay, and the security guard, Tom, gave a tired wave. Usually he joked with us about the day's chaos, but tonight he was silent. We wheeled our patient toward the elevator bank, and Mark hit the button for the 12th floor. The doors opened with a smooth ding, and we stepped inside. I pressed the floor number, and the elevator ascended normally. When it stopped and the doors slid open, my stomach dropped. We weren't in a hospital corridor. Darkness stretched ahead of us, dense and suffocating. The air felt frigid, and the smell hit me instantly. An old, metallic scent, mixed with something like moldy medical supplies. I flicked on my penlight and scanned the space. Gurneys pushed against walls, IV stands with rusted hooks, peeling mint green paint. Dust floated in the beam, and the silence was so complete it pressed against my ears. Our patient's eyes widened. Where are we?" he whispered. His voice echoed off walls that didn't seem to exist in the hospital layout I knew. Mark hit the door close button repeatedly. Nothing. The elevator doors stayed open, and we both realized something impossible. The building we knew didn't have a 12th floor in the East Wing. I'm not stopping here," I said, my voice trembling. I grabbed the patient's arm gently. "Let's go back. Now." Mark pressed the lobby button frantically. The elevator jolted violently before descending, stopping at the floor we actually recognized. Floor 8. We stepped out into the familiar fluorescent hallway, hearts racing, patient still gripping my wrist. Later, I brought it up with Tom at the exit. 12th floor, East Wing, anything like that? He frowned. East Wing only goes up to 11. Always has. There's nothing beyond that. Just offices on 11. You guys seeing things? We didn't press further, but neither of us slept well that night. The image of that pitch-black corridor haunted my dreams, the faint echoes of monitors and whispered voices lingering even in sleep. The next night, Saturday, we were back on shift. Around 9 p.m., another dispatch call came in. A woman had fallen at a local park, possible head injury. The instructions: 12th floor, East Wing, neurology unit. Mark and I exchanged a look of disbelief. "I'm not going anywhere near that floor," Mark muttered, reaching for the radio. He confirmed with dispatch, and after a tense minute, they corrected the location to the 11th floor, neurology unit. The call was routine after that, but the memory of Friday night stayed with me. Sunday was worse. We were called for a car accident. Young woman, conscious but injured. Dispatch directed us again to 12th floor, East Wing, trauma unit. Mark and I froze. The patient noticed our hesitation. "Is this safe?" she asked. "I will take you to the ER, okay?" "Don't worry," I said, forcing calm into my voice. though my chest was tight. The elevator behaved strangely as we entered, moving on its own. I pressed the lobby button, but it ignored me, climbing instead. When it stopped, the doors opened into that same dark corridor. This time, it wasn't empty. I could hear a chorus of faint monitor beeps, slightly out of sync, and a voice calling names I didn't recognize. The patient cried out, pulling at me, and I had to restrain myself from bolting down the stairs. Mark jammed the doors open and pounded the emergency button. The beeping grew louder, almost deafening, and a chill filled the air. Then, as suddenly as it started, the elevator lurched downward, doors closing despite our efforts, and we shot back to the ER. That night, my curiosity won over fear. Mark had a cousin in hospital facilities management, and she showed us archived blueprints. There it was, a 12th floor, East Wing, a state-of-the-art ICU built decades ago. A newspaper clipping detailed a power failure that killed every patient on life support that night. The hospital had sealed the floor, erased it from all current maps, and removed it from the elevator system. But the dispatch system still generated calls to it. Old data, old user accounts, ghost information no one could delete. Whatever was there, it wasn't gone, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what lingered. Monday morning arrived, and I was still unsettled. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was reaching through that sealed-off 12th floor, as if it remembered the lives that were lost there. Mark had taken a personal day, saying he needed a break, but I couldn't stop thinking about what we'd seen. That night, around 11 p.m., a dispatch call came in for an elderly man struggling to breathe. Before I even reached the patient, the destination popped up on the system. 12th floor, East Wing, respiratory unit. My stomach dropped, and my hands went cold. I hesitated, then quickly called Mark, who answered groggily. "You seeing this too?" I asked, voice low. He was silent for a moment. "Yeah. Take him somewhere else. County Medical. Farther, but safe. Don't risk that place." I nodded, though a part of me wanted to see it again, to understand. The patient was fragile, barely conscious, and I carefully loaded him into the rig. His grip on my wrist was surprisingly strong, and his eyes fluttered open as if sensing the fear around us. "I need to go there," he whispered hoarsely. "Room E12, my wife." I froze. The 12th floor. The patient's last words echoed in my mind, mingling with the memory of that dark, abandoned corridor. I tried to calm him, steering the ambulance toward County Medical, but he kept repeating the room number. E12. Don't forget, E12. When we arrived at County Medical, the staff immediately took over. The patient stabilized for a few hours, but his murmurs never stopped. Later, I discovered his name, Harold Garrett. I checked old St. Helena archives. Room E12 had been occupied by Helen Garrett, who had died in that ICU power failure decades ago. The connection was impossible, yet undeniable. After that night, I knew I couldn't return to St. Helena. The next day, I submitted a transfer request and joined a different company. Mark stayed a few more weeks, but took early retirement soon after. Even though I no longer worked near St. Helena, the legend of the 12th floor never left me. Paramedics still mentioned strange calls. Dispatchers would double-check floors mid-shift, and the occasional patient would murmur a room number that didn't exist. I never investigated further, but I knew the floor was still active in some way. Months later, construction crews attempted to renovate the East Wing. They reported failing equipment, drained batteries, and eerie monitor sounds echoing through sealed stairwells. 3 workers quit after claiming they heard voices and footsteps, and no one dared continue without specialized safety teams. I never returned to that hospital, and I don't intend to. But sometimes, when I'm driving past the building at night, I catch a faint glow from the uppermost windows, flickering like monitors in an abandoned ICU. And in those moments, I feel that same cold, metallic scent, hear the faint beeps of long-dead heart monitors, and realize the 12th floor has never truly disappeared. It's waiting quietly for the next person to step inside. I've worked as a paramedic in Austin, Texas for nearly a decade, and I've seen my share of chaos, car accidents, overdoses, heart attacks, but nothing could prepare me for the strange calls from Elmwood Drive. It started on a humid July night. My partner Brett and I were midway through a long shift when dispatch crackled through about a cardiac arrest at 123 Elmwood Drive. Routine stuff, right? Except there was something off. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, dark and lifeless. Our ambulance lights swept across peeling white siding, and the cracked driveway had grass growing through the concrete like green veins. No porch light, no car, no movement. I grabbed the gurney while Brett hoisted the jump bag, both of us uneasy in the silence. Normally, someone meets you at the door, a spouse, neighbor, anyone. But here, nothing. Just the faint hum of the distant highway. We pounded on the front door and announced ourselves. Silence. Brett shone his flashlight through the grimy windows, revealing an empty living room coated in a thick layer of dust. Every step we took around the property seemed louder than the last, the crunch of gravel under our boots echoing unnaturally. The backyard was worse. Waist-high weeds, an abandoned swing set rusted through, one swing dangling by a single chain. It was as if time had frozen there, leaving the house untouched for decades. Brett called dispatch to verify the address. Nancy, our dispatcher, confirmed it. Elmwood Drive, correct. Caller reported chest pains, difficulty breathing. He's alone, she said, her voice tinged with confusion. We exchanged glances. There had been no caller. The house had been abandoned for years. Neighbors later confirmed it. The last residents moved to Michigan, and the house had been empty ever since. We circled the house again, searching for signs of life or forced entry. Nothing. No footprints, no broken windows, no indication anyone had been inside. The silence pressed against us like a physical weight, and a creeping sense of dread started to settle in my chest. I could hear Brett's shallow breathing through his mask, matching the anxious rhythm of my own. Dispatch kept the line open as we stood in the backyard. Then, as we approached the side window, a faint sound crackled through the radio. An elderly man's voice, strained and articulate, describing chest pains and difficulty breathing. It was coming from Elmwood Drive. I felt my stomach twist. Brett's face went pale. This can't be real, he muttered. I didn't respond. I knew what we were hearing, and I couldn't explain it. Nancy asked the caller to stay on the line. The voice complied, calm but urgent. Then the line went silent, though the connection remained open. My heart pounded, and I felt an icy shiver run down my spine. A few days later, the call came again. Same hour, same symptoms, same empty house. This time, we brought the police. Officer Daniels arrived with his partner, and together we searched every corner. The property owner confirmed the house had been vacant for months, utilities disconnected. Yet dispatch recorded the call perfectly, even capturing the voice of the elderly man. Brett began documenting everything obsessively. He recorded calls, took notes, and researched possible explanations, spoofing, crossed lines, some elaborate prank. But every expert he consulted confirmed what we already suspected. If the phone line was physically dead, there was no way a call could originate from it. Yet the calls persisted. I started digging into the history of the house. Years ago, a man named Leonard Hutchkins had lived there alone. He was elderly, had a history of heart problems, and had died of a massive heart attack inside the house. Coroner reports stated he was found near the phone, receiver off the hook, unable to reach help in time. The details matched the calls, age, voice tone, description of symptoms. But how could that be? Leonard had been gone for decades. For weeks we continued receiving the calls, often twice a week, sometimes spaced out for days. Each call was identical in urgency, though the details varied slightly. Sometimes chest pressure, sometimes shortness of breath. Always the same voice, always the same address. We had nothing to show for it. No movement, no signs of life, and no technical explanation. The calls were relentless, and I began to dread night shifts. Every time my pager buzzed around 3 a.m., my stomach dropped. Dispatchers grew uneasy too, noting the calls in the official logs, though they had no explanation. The house seemed to exist in two realities, abandoned and silent, yet reaching out through time in a desperate plea. The calls kept coming, sometimes days apart, sometimes back to back. Each time the elderly man's voice sounded urgent, pleading. Brett became obsessed. He would spend his off hours researching phone systems, trying to find some loophole, a technical glitch, anything that could explain the phenomenon. He consulted experts who dismissed every theory. If the line is physically dead, no call can come from it, they said. Yet the calls persisted, like echoes from beyond. One Wednesday morning, the phone crackled again around 3:15 a.m. My heart sank as I saw the caller ID, 123 Elmwood Drive. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual, glancing at Brett, who just nodded grimly. We had rehearsed this before. Approach cautiously, check the house, call police if necessary. But we both knew what we were going to find. Nothing. The house sat shrouded in darkness, the peeling siding glowing faintly in our headlights. The driveway was overgrown, weeds pushing through the cracked concrete. The swing in the backyard hung still, rusted and broken. I tried to shake off the creeping dread, but it clung to me like a second skin. Brett called dispatch as we approached. "We're at the location," he said. "No one should be here." Nancy's voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the tension beneath. "The caller is on the line. He's describing chest pains. Age, 74, lives alone." We stepped out, flashlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Nothing moved. Windows remained opaque with dust, doors locked tight. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears as I walked around the house, checking every window, every door, every shadow. The silence was oppressive, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then, the voice came through again, soft, strained, unmistakably human. "Please, help. Chest hurts. Can't reach the phone." It was Leonard Hutchkins, or at least the voice of the man who had died there decades ago. I froze, the hairs on my neck standing on end. Brett reached for my arm, and I could see the same disbelief mirrored in his eyes. Officer Daniels had parked a cruiser across the street, watching silently. He confirmed no movement, no lights, no signs of life inside. Yet the call persisted. We couldn't explain it, and no one dared suggest it was anything less than real. That night, I returned home, but sleep evaded me. I replayed every call in my mind, trying to rationalize, to explain it logically. There was nothing, no evidence, no technical flaw, just the voice, clear, urgent, human, calling from a house that no longer existed as a home. Weeks later, Brett and I finally traced Leonard Hutchkins' history. He had suffered a fatal heart attack in that house, found days later by a neighbor. His phone had been off the hook, the log showing he never completed a call for help. And yet, his voice continued to reach out decades later, through disconnected lines and abandoned walls, seeking someone to answer. On the exact anniversary of his death, the final call came. I was on duty, and Nancy played the recording through the dispatch system. The voice was calmer, almost serene. "Thank you for coming," he said, and then the line went dead. That was it. The call stopped, as if his message had finally been received, his plea finally acknowledged. Brett transferred to a day shift, leaving night calls behind. I stayed on but avoided that sector of town. The house was eventually sold, gutted, and rebuilt. A new family moved in, painting it yellow with white trim, planting flowers, and filling the yard with toys. The eerie legacy of Elmwood Drive was gone, or at least it seemed so. Yet every time I drive past that street in the early morning hours, I feel the chill, smell the faint metallic tang, and hear the faint echo of beeping monitors in my mind. I can almost hear Leonard's voice, grateful, lingering, as if reminding me that some cries for help never truly disappear even when the world forgets. I've been a paramedic in Charlotte long enough to know when a call is going to stick with me. Most fade after a while. The mangled cars on I-85, the overdoses in narrow bathrooms, the elderly who slipped quietly into their last sleep. They leave smudges, sure, but you learn to live with them. But the first night I went to apartment 3B, it carved itself into me like glass. The call came through just after 8. A woman on the 4th floor of the Wellington complex swore she heard someone screaming for help. Dispatch flagged it as a welfare check, and because we were closest, my partner and I rolled over. We didn't expect much. Half the time it was someone's TV blaring through the walls. When we pulled up, the place looked ordinary enough. Brick exterior, identical balconies stacked like shoeboxes, a handful of lights glowing against the dusk. We buzzed in, climbed the stairs, and were met by a cluster of tenants lingering nervously in the hallway. "It's coming from in there," one of them said, pointing to 3B. "You'll hear it. He's been screaming for help for 10 minutes straight." We pressed our ears to the door. At first, nothing but the hum of the building's pipes. Then, faint but clear, came the voice. A man's voice, ragged and broken. "Help me. Please. Somebody." The sound prickled down my arms. My partner and I exchanged a look, then pounded on the door. "Sir, this is EMS. Can you hear us?" The reply was another strangled plea. We called for maintenance to bring a key. The manager showed up with a sullen expression, muttering something about prank calls, but he unlocked the door anyway. We rushed in, flashlights slicing through the dark. The apartment was empty, not just vacant, bare. No couch, no dishes, not even a forgotten lamp. The carpets bore the faint stains of old tenants, but the air had that hollow stillness of a space long unoccupied. We swept it twice, from the closet to the bathroom. Nothing. Nobody. Yet from somewhere inside those walls came the voice again, clearer this time, as though the man were standing inches from me. "Help me. Can't breathe." Every hair on my body lifted. My partner's face had gone pale. The manager cursed under his breath and claimed it must be kids playing recordings. But there was no stereo, no phone, no electricity even. The place had been disconnected for months. We filed the report anyway, logged it as unfounded, and left. But the sound clung to me, that desperate rasp. It didn't feel like a prank. It felt like someone's last breath frozen in the drywall. 2 nights later, dispatch sent us back. Same building, same time, same complaint. When we got there, the neighbors were already gathered again, their faces taut with fear. "He's screaming again," one whispered. "It's always between 8 and 9. Sure enough, as soon as we stepped onto the landing, I heard it. The same hoarse begging, spilling out into the hall like smoke. "Please, don't leave me here. Please." We went inside, even more methodical this time. I pressed my stethoscope against the walls, half mad trying to locate the source. My partner knocked on every square foot of drywall, checking for vents or openings. Nothing explained it. The building manager, jittery now, insisted the unit had been empty for weeks. He refused to linger once the voice started up, retreating down the hall like he couldn't bear to hear it. I remember standing in that hollow living room, the shadows gathering in the corners, listening to the invisible man's suffering circle us like a trapped animal. My throat felt tight, and for one insane moment I nearly called out to him, promised him we'd help. But the rational part of me kept my mouth shut. We left again without answers. Word spread through the station. Other crews were called to 3B on different nights, and they all came back with the same story. They heard it too. It wasn't just me losing it. Police responded once, and 2 officers swore up and down that a man's voice had shouted at them from behind the locked bathroom door. When they forced it open, the room was bare, dust on the tile, water stains on the ceiling, no one inside. By the 4th call, curiosity overcame protocol. I cornered the building manager in the lobby and demanded the unit's history. He looked cornered, shifting on his feet. Guy used to live there, he admitted finally. Middle-aged, quiet, Walter something. He passed away about 6 weeks back. Natural causes, they said. I asked him how long Walter had been in there before anyone found him. The manager's eyes flicked to the floor. Couple weeks, maybe. My stomach sank. He'd lain in that apartment, calling for help no one came to give, his voice ricocheting against 4 sealed walls until his body gave out. Now, every night at the same hour, that plea spilled into the living world again, demanding to be heard. I tried to leave it behind, told myself it was grief or stress or a trick of acoustics, but the voice had threaded itself into my thoughts. On slow nights, I caught myself glancing at the clock, bracing for the moment it would start. Even when I wasn't there, I swore I could hear him whispering in the static of my radio, clawing for recognition. My partner warned me to drop it. Some things you're better off not chasing, he said, but I couldn't let go. And that was before the voice started following me home. The next morning, the house felt like it had a heartbeat of its own. The walls seemed to pulse faintly with every step I took. I tried to brush it off as nerves, as leftover adrenaline from the night before. But deep down, I knew something in this house was awake now, and it wasn't me. I made coffee in the dusty kitchen, forcing myself to stay grounded. Every cabinet door was crooked, hanging slightly ajar, like someone had searched through them while I slept. I didn't remember leaving them that way. I tried to keep my hands steady, but the mug rattled against the counter as I set it down. That's when I heard it, the whisper. Not loud, barely there, like a secret passed between 2 people in another room. My name, drawn out, soft, as though the walls themselves were speaking it. I froze. My skin prickled with cold. It came again. Eli. I turned toward the hallway. The sound was coming from there, from the long corridor that stretched toward the back of the house. Something told me not to go, to leave right then and there. But I couldn't. Some mix of fear and curiosity rooted me in place. I stepped carefully, each floorboard groaning beneath me. The whisper grew faint, leading me past closed doors until I reached the very last one on the left, the one I hadn't opened yet. My hand hovered over the doorknob. The whisper stopped. Silence swallowed the house whole. I twisted the knob. The room inside was small, almost like a nursery. A broken crib leaned against the far wall. Its wood splintered as if something had clawed at it from within. The wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing words scrawled beneath in jagged handwriting. Over and over again, one phrase repeated, "Don't let him out." My stomach lurched. I backed away, slamming the door shut. That was when every other door in the hallway burst open at once. The sound was deafening, bang after bang, wood hitting the walls. I stumbled back, clutching the wall for balance. The air grew heavy, thick, pressing against my chest. And then I heard it, from the closed nursery door. A knock, slow, deliberate. 3 knocks. My breath hitched. I backed away further, tripping over a loose board. My mug slipped from my hand and shattered across the hallway floor. The knock came again, louder this time, and then a voice. Low, guttural, not a whisper anymore, but a growl. "Let me out!" I ran. I didn't care about my bag, didn't care about my jacket hanging by the door. I bolted out of the house, down the driveway, not stopping until I reached my car. My hands shook so hard I fumbled the keys, dropping them twice before I could shove them into the ignition. The engine coughed to life and I tore out of there, gravel spitting from the tires. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst. I didn't look back, not once. But as the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, I could still hear it. That voice, whispering through the static of my car radio. "You already let me out." I've been a paramedic for over a decade, and there are some calls you never forget. They stick to you like smoke on your clothes. The night I first met Evelyn Hart was one of those calls, though "met" isn't the right word. It was more like being caught in someone else's unfinished story. It was a Friday night, late September, and the air smelled of wet leaves and exhaust fumes. My partner, Lucas, and I were finishing up a long double shift when dispatch came through with a single car accident on Highway 42, right by the Sawmill Curve. The name alone made my stomach tighten. That curve had a reputation. Tight angle, no guardrail, and more fatal wrecks than I could count. Locals whispered it was cursed. I always chalked it up to bad engineering and driver error. At least I did until that night. The dispatch operator's voice had a strange pause when she gave us the victim's name. Evelyn Hart, 29 years old. She repeated it twice, slower the second time, like she wasn't sure if she'd read it right. Lucas raised an eyebrow, but neither of us said anything. When we pulled up, our headlights swept across twisted steel and shattered glass. A silver sedan had plowed straight into the telephone pole at the bend. The car looked like a crushed soda can, and for a moment I thought we were only there to bag a body. But then I saw her, slumped behind the wheel, blood running down her temple. Her eyes flickered open when I touched her wrist. She shouldn't have been alive. Not with that much damage. Not with the dashboard folded into her lap. But she looked straight at me and whispered, "Please, my husband is waiting. I need to get home." Her voice had an odd rhythm, almost rehearsed, like she was reading lines from a play. Her skin was cool despite the warm night, and her pupils had this faint gray ring around the edges. I tried to ignore it and focused on the work. Lucas stabilized her neck while I checked vitals. Surprisingly steady. Too steady. The math didn't add up. We called in the jaws of life and spent 20 minutes cutting her free. The whole time she apologized for the trouble, apologized for being late, apologized for things I couldn't understand. We loaded her into the ambulance, and I rode in the back while Lucas drove. Every few minutes she asked me what day it was. When I said Friday, she'd nod slowly, as if testing the word against something only she knew. At the hospital, we handed her off to the trauma team. Dr. Rowe took charge, wheeling her away for scans. Lucas and I slumped in the break room with paper cups of burnt coffee, half in shock that she'd even survived the crash. That's when one of the charge nurses overheard us mention her name. She froze mid-step, clipboard slipping from her hands. "What did you say?" she asked. "Evelyn Hart," I repeated, her face drained of color. "That's not possible. She's already here. She died Monday night. Same spot, same car, same name." I laughed at first, but she pulled up the records. Autopsy, death certificate, everything in black and white. Evelyn Hart, dead 4 nights earlier from a collision at Sawmill Curve. Lucas and I stared at each other, waiting for someone to admit it was a joke. But it wasn't. The paperwork was real, the signature inked by Dr. Rowe himself. That's when the call lights flashed. Dr. Rowe came back, pale and sweating. Evelyn had vanished from radiology. 1 minute she was on the CT table, the next the room was empty. Security footage showed the automatic doors opening, but the cameras caught nothing but flickering lights and empty hallways. Only one guard swore he saw her walk past, even nodded at her. His partner, sitting beside him, swore the hallway was empty. We checked everywhere: bathrooms, stairwells, parking lot. All we found was her hospital gown, folded neatly on the asphalt where our ambulance had parked. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My head spun with questions I didn't have the nerve to say out loud. The next evening, just as the sky turned purple, dispatch called again. Same location, same name. Evelyn Hart. Lucas and I didn't want to go, but who else would? When we arrived, the scene was identical down to the placement of shattered glass. The silver sedan crushed against the pole, steam hissing from the radiator, and there she was again. Evelyn. Her forehead split open in the exact same place. Her arm bent at the same grotesque angle. She looked up at me through the cracked windshield, this time her eyes locking onto mine with chilling clarity. "You remember me," she whispered. Her voice wasn't surprised. It was relieved. I froze when she said those words. You remember me?" Her eyes weren't distant this time, not clouded or glassy. They were sharp, aware, filled with something that unsettled me more than any amount of blood or broken bone. Lucas snapped me out of it. "We need to move. Now!" He was already grabbing the cutters, going through the motions like it was any other crash. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an accident scene. It was a performance, and Evelyn was the only one who knew the script. We freed her faster that night. Maybe because we'd already done it once before. Maybe because I was too eager to get her out of that wreck, away from the curve that seemed to birth her again and again. Once in the ambulance, she clutched my wrist with startling strength. "It's always Friday," she said, her breath shallow but steady. "Always that curve. I don't make it home." I wanted to reassure her, to tell her she was safe, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I asked the question burning in my mind. "Evelyn, do you know you died here before?" Her expression flickered, almost like a glitch in a recording. Then she whispered, "I know, but he's still waiting. I have to get back." I didn't ask who he was. I already knew. At the hospital, I refused to leave her side. Lucas muttered that I was being obsessive, but I couldn't help it. If I let her out of my sight, she'd vanish again, and this whole nightmare would repeat itself. In radiology, while the tech prepped the CT scanner, Evelyn squeezed my hand. Her skin felt cold, too cold, like someone left outside in winter. "Every night it happens," she said. "Every night I take that turn. I can't change it, but maybe you can remember me." The tech looked confused, but I didn't explain. What could I say? That we were treating a woman who'd already been buried? Then her vitals spiked. The monitor screamed. She gasped, eyes wide. "If I don't leave now, I'll miss my chance." I tried to hold her still, but she bolted upright with impossible strength. "Tell him I tried," she pleaded. "Tell him I was on my way." And then she was gone, not vanished into thin air. This time her body simply went limp, her pulse flatlining. Dr. Rowe called it at 12:17 a.m. But when they checked her, something was wrong. Her liver temperature, her rigor, they all indicated she had been dead for days, not minutes, exactly as the autopsy from Monday had already shown. Lucas and I didn't speak as we left the room. What was there to say? The next morning, against every rule and shred of common sense, I drove to the address listed in her file. A modest ranch house with peeling paint, a swing set rusting in the backyard. A man answered the door, gaunt, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "I'm Brian Hart," he said, when I introduced myself. "You were with her, weren't you?" I nodded. He invited me in. The living room was cluttered with unopened mail, framed photos of a smiling young woman, Evelyn. She looked vibrant, full of life, the opposite of the pale figure I'd pulled from that wreck. "She called me Monday night," Brian said, voice cracking. "Said she was tired, pulling over for a quick rest." That was the last time I heard her voice. He gestured to a stack of papers on the table. Obituary clippings, the funeral program, even the receipt for the casket. Proof she was gone. But then he showed me his phone. Dozens of voicemails, each time-stamped after her death. Some were just breathing, others a faint whisper. "Almost home." The last message had come just hours before my visit. "She always says the same thing," Brian muttered, staring at the phone like it might ring again. "That she's trying, that she'll be home soon." I didn't tell him about the crashes, the hospital vanishing, the way she had spoken my name. I couldn't. He was drowning in grief already. But as I turned to leave, Brian grabbed my arm. His grip was trembling but firm. "Do you believe in loops?" he asked. "Like a piece of time can trap someone?" Because Evelyn, she dreamed about that curve for months. Said she kept dying there, over and over. I think she's still out there, caught in it. His words haunted me long after I left. That night, dispatch rang again. Highway 42, Sawmill Curve. The name, Evelyn Hart. I refused the call. For the first time in my career, I told Lucas to let another crew handle it. But no one else went. No one else would. The call disappeared from the logs like it had never existed. The following week, the county finally installed guardrails and new lighting at the curve. Construction crews said it was the easiest job they'd ever done. No equipment malfunctions, no unexplained delays, almost like something that had been blocking them was finally gone. I drove past the spot a few days later. The road gleamed under the fresh lights. For the first time, it looked ordinary, harmless even. But at exactly midnight, as I slowed near the pole, I saw them. Fresh tire marks on the shoulder, sharp and dark against the pavement. The kind you'd expect if someone had slammed their brakes too late. I sat there in my car, engine idling, staring at the skid marks. And for just a moment, I thought I heard her voice in the whisper of the wind. I made it. Maybe she finally did.